Entrepreneurial ecosystems around the country often have one great connector who's driving it. Is that a feature or a bug? We'll talk about that today on Builders Live. Hey, I'm Chris Wink. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Technically, the news organization with a community of technologists and entrepreneurs, coming reluctantly live from the Pittsburgh airport. So the background noise and the Spirit logo sponsoring this week is all according to plan, I promise. We also have a couple new faces on today's episode. So we're talking about the process and people behind entrepreneurial ecosystems. My longstanding co-hosts Rae'Mah Henderson and Victor Hwang are joining us, but two new friends, Taylor Eubanks and Hollie Mackey. Taylor, Hollie, Victor, Rae'Mah, can we all start by just saying hello? Thanks for being here.
Hello.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for making it with all the bad Wi-Fi and everything.
We're doing it. And because we are now especially geographically far flung, my goal here is, as usual, we'll kick off the episode with a bright light you're seeing in entrepreneurial ecosystem. Maybe you also set up, where are you? Because I like that we're all over the place. I'll close us out, but maybe Rae'Mah, take the lead here, start us off. Where are you? And give us a bright light. Reintroduce yourself even, and give us the bright light from entrepreneurial ecosystems for you of the moment.
For sure. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Rae'Mah Henderson, venture investor and entrepreneur. I'm here in Birmingham, Alabama. And the bright light that I like to shout out today is the New Earth facility. It's the East Alabama Rural Innovation and Training Hub, nicknamed Earth, that's opening up in Calhoun County. I'm so excited for it to open up. So I just wanted to shout them out. That'll be my bright light.
I love that. I couldn't even pull it up fast enough, but I'm gonna poke into that. All right. Victor, what do you got as a bright light from the world of entrepreneurial ecosystem building?
I am coming to you live from lovely New York City on spring break with the family. And
thank you for supporting the lesser known ecosystems, Victor.
That's what we're here for. we're here for, New York and my bright light is going to be the Midwest. I just a couple weeks ago, I was at South by Southwest for the Midwest House, and Taylor Eubanks here on the call with us invited me out there, and we had a great event. It was celebrating the International Economic Development Council's 100th anniversary and how they are transforming into an entrepreneurship focused economic development industry, which was a phenomenal conversation. Del Gines was my co-panelist. We had a really fun conversation, and Taylor did a wonderful job in pulling all these different threads of different people together from all across the Midwest. And it was very exciting to see the rising up of entrepreneurship across the Midwest like that.
I think we're gonna get to that. So all right, let's use it as a transition. Taylor, what's a bright light you were seeing out in the world?
Well, thank you a million times for having me, and thank you, Victor, for showing up and really showing out for the Midwest. But Taylor Eubanks, I am Chief Partnerships and Strategy for Midwest House, and I'm in Kansas. I'm smack dab in the middle, and
Respect.
I always am right here in Kansas.
You're always right in the middle.
I would say my light is Chicago, keeping it Midwest. I'm going to Chicago later today, actually, right after this. I'm going to catch a flight. But at South by Southwest, I have the honor of meeting some of the Obama Foundation. The Obama Presidential Center in Chicago is about to open. And so some of their team came out, and there's a date. It opens on June 19th. And so I'm really excited to just see what the South Side of Chicago looks like. I have in my mind, what's South Side, but they're really innovating place and changing outcomes for people. So that's my bright light. We have a date for opening.
Okay, I love to hear that. And my dear friend Hollie Mackey, bring us around. Where are you? Where are you normally? And what's a bright light from your world?
Yeah, so I am currently sitting in Clear Lake, Iowa, and working with what will be my bright light, quite frankly, as we get to the end. But typically I sit in Fargo, North Dakota, originally from Eastern Montana, and really excited about the work that we get to do up there. I'm the CEO for the NSF AgTech Engine in North Dakota. So really looking at the ways that we can invest in entrepreneurs and ecosystems differently, particularly with the National Science Foundation's push for doing it in areas that haven't typically been invested in. And my bright light are the network of incredibly smart farmers that I get to work with every day. And I can't say there's an organization name, and I can't say that there's like a specific location, because we have all of these really smart farmers who are thinking about the ways that we can drive food security and ensure that our nation's food systems are really prepared for the future. And so I'm sitting right now in Iowa. There's a whole bunch of startups and farmers here. We have our network in North Dakota. We have our network right down in Tennessee, and all our travel growers as well. And so for me, that bright light is seeing that, people who are actually doing the work, boots on the ground, are taking control of where the entrepreneurship and what that ecosystem looks like in ways that benefits their communities.
Beautiful. These are bright lights. I'll add one more from me, and then widen us to our conversation at hand. And Victor, relates to yours. Like a couple weeks ago, got to help lead one of the plenary sessions at IEDC's Leadership Summit in DC. They do an annual summit early part of the year and an annual conference in the fall that'll be in New Orleans. But at the Leadership Summit a couple weeks ago, I've long known IEDC, as you said, Victor. It's been around for a century, but a renewed energy from a whole bunch of new faces, including Dale Nathanoli, the new executive director of the last 4 years, has brought it forward to take in an entrepreneurship perspective. And that for me is really exciting, because to be in front of those 300 to 600 economic development leaders from counties, regions, states around this country and the world, for so many of them to be keenly interested in how entrepreneurship, and even sometimes high growth entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship generally, can be at the center of their economic strategy, not kind of an afterthought, is a much appreciated and very exciting bright light as the Pittsburgh airport makes noble announcements. Victor, let me go on mute as this announcement goes, and start me with our conversation. I want to talk about people and process. In so many communities around this country, it is meaningfully helpful to have that one really charismatic connector who knows everyone and is driving everything. And so much of this movement was started by one person in a bunch of counties. I have since identified as one of them, 20 years ago. Talk to me about the risks and the opportunities of that. Those great one connector who's driving the ball forward, but they can get burnt out. We can not build systems. Talk to me about your worldview with Right to Start, the balance of the charismatic connector and the systems they don't always have.
Well, that's sort of natural human instinct to look to the hero. That's kind of how people think. We think, oh, what is the one person? Can I look at that person? Can I, when I go to a place, can I go find that person? It's kind of the guru, on the mountaintop, metaphor, and it kind of resonates in human history. But it's actually not how entrepreneurial ecosystems prosper. It's not how economies thrive. Economies thrive through highly distributed networks. And so there is this paradox where a really great ecosystem really thrives with lots and lots of people involved, hundreds or even thousands of people that really cause that kind of network effect to happen. But when you're trying to drive change, you need an individual to sell it, to pitch it, to drive funding, to drive policies, to drive programming. And so that is the real challenge, is how do you overcome that paradox? And I've seen it happen a number of times in places. And the way, and this goes to, the book I wrote a number of years ago called The Rainforest, which is most people try to build economies through the equivalent of planting farms. They try to find basically it's crop building, and it's linear, it's one at a time, it's maximization of crop yield. But great ecosystems are like rainforests. They're highly diverse, they're highly serendipitous, they bring in all kinds of people. You can't plan them, you can't control them. And you grow rainforests by shaping the environment as a whole. And in a natural system, it's the air, it's the soil, it's the nutrients, the sunlight, it's the way everything flows together. In a natural human ecosystem, it's the connections, it's the culture, it's the relationships, it's the resources that people are able to deploy to bring into problems. So it's a different way of looking at it, and it requires you to think in both at the same time. You have to think in terms of the people that are going to be leaders, but more importantly, you want people who can get to the other side, which is they can think about how do you actually build the whole system up, not just how do you focus the energy around a few people.
Well said. Rae'Mah, I got to assume that you might be one of these people in Birmingham, Alabama, that would be very familiar to all of us, like ambitious, smart, just cares about this, civically minded, naturally connects people or organizes some effort. And most ecosystems end up naturally having a few of these little orbits, but they often, at their best case, do some overlap. But there can be this over-reliance of, oh, if she's not doing it, no one's going to do it. I wonder, just talk to me a bit about how you think of that now as a 20-something who's likely doing some of that organizing in a place. What's the balance between, of course, it's nice to be recognized for doing a lot of leadership and organizing, but recognizing that there's an inherent flaw if you become too important to a system that needs many people.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I feel like there's like a pipeline always in the back of my mind, and I'm like trying to identify where I fall in the pipeline. Because like if you're a champion in your local ecosystem, I feel like you either go to this place of like you're really important and you kind of end up as like a big fish in a small pond, which is great, but also very scary because I'm like, oh my gosh, just am I limiting myself to just where I live? Or you end up on the other side where you're just like feeling majorly unsupported or feeling used by your ecosystem. And so I've seen it go in two different ways. I have a friend who is very similar to me, out there hosting events. And like she was hosting this event called Startup Drinks for Founders across the city. It was really great. Everybody would meet up for a beer on Thursdays. Super burnt out, but luckily one of the local ESOs ended up taking it on. Well, I had a friend recently who was like, hey, I want to give away some conference tickets. Let's get together, like all the Black techies in Birmingham, and like, let's give away some of these conference tickets. So I called my friend. I was like, hey, Naisha, like you're over Birmingham Black techies. Let's put together a dinner. We're going to give away some concert tickets. And she was like, girl, I don't live there no more. I haven't lived there in 3 months, so kind of like how you stated at the top of the call. And so I think a fix, and maybe a simple fix, is something that's already being done in other ecosystems, but just simply ESO is taking on like a change maker in residence just to offer free event space or free office space or something along those lines.
I like that idea. Taylor, Hollie, I want to bring you both in. Maybe Taylor, I'll start with you. You've had a few different seats. You've been inside an economic development government agency, and we see this layering across the country happening, where there is sometimes an economic development that has some financial resources, and they can help make either people or places or efforts take place. There tends to be now some layering of entrepreneur support org. Sometimes they're full-time staff, sometimes they're partner, and there's always some kind of volunteer effort because so many of us like this stuff or feel naturally have an affinity toward it, that we're organizing people informally or formally because we like it for whatever reason. And that, to oversimplify, is my interpretation of Victor's rainforest and the ecosystem metaphor, that you have differently sized organizations that don't even have to all like each other, but effectively do create some strength because there's some overlap in the system. Taylor, you've done both. You've done the like, this is my job stuff, and you've done the I like this because it's something that's important and motivating to me. What's your kind of take on this balance between the person who drives things forward versus the process that takes work to build?
Yeah. So for me, how this has shown up, especially early in my career, gosh, even now, I fangirl. I fangirl over our economic development giants and celebrities. You should have seen the first time I met Del Gines at an IEDC conference. It was embarrassing. If anyone saw that interaction, they probably are still talking about it today. But I would put these icons, Victor, my gosh.
That's the same thing I say whenever I see Victor. I say, my gosh.
Right. Like
that's
the hair is always perfect. We know what to say. Like it's
the same thing my wife says every morning. It's like, my gosh.
I'm sure your wife would agree with that. You're like, yes, right, my thoughts exactly.
Right. No, I'll hype you up. So as we're looking through ecosystems, as we're looking to these people, Del said to me the other day something. He said, "You got next." I was like, "What the heck does that mean? You're always going to be here. What are you talking about?" And so when I did my time on the inside, when I was at the state, I would always talk about funding it like a founder. We have to fund these processes, our offices, our programs, the same way we encourage founders to fund their business. Look at diversified sources to pull in, build resiliency, all of that. And so that statement from Del of you got next, I was like, oh shoot. So we need to build succession plans with an ecosystem. We need to chart this out. We should have how we did it. We should have documentation logs. But then also communicating those things back. Because gosh, even for me, as I meet those giants, they sometimes are just normal humans. Not always, there's Victor, but the others, they're sometimes just humans. And so they have a time frame that they're going to be with us. So how much knowledge can we engage? How much can we follow? Can we take from their lived experience and then apply to the work that we're going to continue and carry forward? We could stay addressing the same challenges for the next 50 years, or we could start to solve some of those and let the next generation have their own issues. And so I think that starts with true succession planning within ecosystems. And yeah, kind of normalizing those heroes or those giants within ecosystem.
Normalizing those heroes. Hollie Mackey, you have super interesting perspective to this. You've done for long periods of time lots of different kinds of organizing, but now you're on top of an NSF Engine, one of the better respected programs in the country, doing really advanced sciences and trying to commercialize it. You probably have a lot of stakeholders to manage. Your old organizing roots, I probably bet were once one of the charismatic people. I'll just connect all the things, but you're also building processes. Talk to me about the tension and the difficulty of moving things forward as an individual while also trying to build a process inside a chaotic dynamic like an NSF Engine, if you can.
Yeah, I mean, I characterize that as having the best job in the world. I get to do this every day, right?
Yeah.
But there is tension, and I think even thinking about Taylor, like I love the idea of succession planning. I don't fangirl, right? And I don't have these
She
big
looked me in the eyes
heroes
and said, "You ain't
because
shit, Wink." That's what she said to me when she,
yeah, I know, right? I mean, I might fangirl Taylor after this because I love the
Right.
energy, but I think that but I'm also a lot older, right? And so I've been around these people and I know that they're real people and I know they care deeply and they want the same succession plan. And I think that those are the parts of ecosystems and charismatic personalities and people who organize that make it effective. But what I also find is, right, at some point when we're building ecosystems, there's components to what we're doing and why we're doing it that get lost in kind of the static and chaos of the recognition we get for doing the work, right? And so I think the challenge of having kind of lone charismatic personalities or kind of lone people doing the organizing, one for them, the burnout, 100%, right? But there's also, people are people, and it is human nature to like the attention, and it is human nature to want to be like the best of the best, and to have your name up on the stage, and I've been in those positions where I've had my name on the stage and I've had all of this stuff, and it can be intoxicating. The problem for ecosystems, going back to your original point, and I think to some of the points that Victor and Rae'Mah made perfectly, is it's messy, it's complicated, and it takes a whole lot of people. And if you're hanging your hat on the charismatic personality of one person, you're actually distracting from what should be happening. And this is what I see happening a lot in ag tech. Like we can all say, like, here are the big names, here are the big players. Very few of those names and players are the people that I would say are doing the work. Right. So going back to my bright spot, right, there's a whole lot of really smart farmers doing the work. They're not getting the credit, they're not getting the recognition, but somebody's taking it from them and somebody's selling it to somebody else. And somebody, right, is then drawing resources that might otherwise be directed towards authentic ecosystem building that really is for us driving rural economic development, supporting communities, thinking about food security as national security. How do we feed the world, right? There's a bigger problem statement in ecosystem build that is not just technological connections, right? It's, I think, to Victor's point, it's about people and it's about relationships. And for it to be about people and relationships, for me, it has to be about trust. And I would say my career has been successful because I fundamentally understood this at a very young age. More likely than not because I'm Cheyenne. It's how our cultures and communities work by nature, right? But for me, right, if you are leaving people or harming people or not including people or not thinking about succession along the way, then you're not really ecosystem building, you're ego building. Okay. And if we're ego building, we're not community building. And
Yes.
I think that is the challenge we're in now, where what I see and what is super exciting when I see people like Rae'Mah and Taylor is we do have a new generation of people coming forward and they're thinking differently. And they're thinking differently in the ways that we should have been thinking to begin with. Because if innovation worked the way we thought it did, we were where we are now, right? We wouldn't have the same problems, same challenges. If move fast and break things actually sustained communities and ecosystem growth, we would see a different outcome for ecosystems now. Right? It's about people, it's about places, it's about relationships, to ensure that we have all the people in the mix at the time in the right combination, right? So the ingredients are put together into that casserole in the right way. Did not mean to make a North Dakota casserole joke, but but I'm totally going to own that one. And so I think moving into the future, where this is an important topic for me, is it's very disruptive to those charismatic personalities, right? It's very disruptive to the people who believe they have built these ecosystems, that they might have to step aside and think about how we can bring in more people. Always need somebody to do the work. That doesn't
Hollie,
necessarily mean that we have people doing the work all the time. You never know who they are, and they're in the back. And for me, ecosystem building is not about the credit and the ego and money and what we can do with it. It's how do we actually help real people in our communities every day be successful and thrive. And so I reject the notion that we can continue to focus on like these big names, get the big drop to consult big tickets and do big audiences. But I would also argue most of my that can draw those crowds, who can charge those prices, who can bring in those types of people, also fundamentally disagree that it's necessary and are also very interested in the ways that we can pass on to another generation or another team. Or you have to have a deep bench on ecosystem building, and you have to have a deep bench that goes back generations, where we can move it forward in ways that doesn't have to reset every time. I think to Taylor's point, it's the constant setting. People's sensibilities are disrupted, that we don't have the same person that can be challenging.
You broke up at times there, Hollie, but there's a few threads that I think stood out to me that I love to build on. The bench part, the bench metaphor is, I think, a great metaphor to play with. So let's like dig on that, and let's get more specific, right? Because we've all said our nice things that'll sound good and great pull quotes for the news story that I'll item out of this. But I want to get more specific because
is Chris cut out?
Oh no, am I cutting out now? Oh no, I'm still good, Hollie. I think the Iowa internet. We got to work on that. the motel. Here's one case study that I've seen a few times over, and I would love for us to build on, which I think the bench speaks to. And I think the pandemic did a couple items about this. It broke the baton handoff in a lot of places, so this got more pronounced in more places. That there was really strong ecosystem building that in the 2010s was happening sometimes informally, or like this language was developing. Victor was writing books and helping us give language, but people were doing this kind of organizing of entrepreneurs and workforce change and trying to shape behaviors. And there was always a subtle handoff taking place. Oh, that new meetup group popped up over there, and someone might talk a little nonsense, but actually if they grew activity and delivered value, it could grow and blossom, and things were starting and stopping. And that for me always felt like what the ecosystem metaphor is describing, right? Like lots of species popping up. You don't actually know what's the community needs are to come forward, which is why we don't necessarily want the single command and control entity to decide, because it happens and can surprise you in ways. And so the handoffs always happen naturally. That new, someone on the bench for the smaller meetup group, or that other ESO or that other group, suddenly it's the right time for themselves or their idea, and it grows. But a thing that has to happen, and this is what I like for us to talk a little about, is you have to both give space for new people to stand up and like not stand in the way. And I can even give a very specific example. My home market of Philadelphia, where I still live and love, I am less involved in ecosystem building work now than I was for the first 15 years of my life, as technically expands to other markets, and I'm much more focused on doing storytelling in other places. I now see an incredible flourishing of a whole bunch of new people I know less well, doing less interesting, different work than I've ever saw in the past. And I just had to step out of the way. And I had to be like, I have no idea what's going to flourish and blossom. But you touched on it, Hollie. When you sat in the seat for a while, you're used to saying, this is how we do it, or that's the group, or this is the effort. And you sometimes have to be like, I'm not the guy anymore. I'm not the gal anymore. And I think that's wonderful. So like, I would love if any of you could talk. I mean, maybe Victor, did you ever have to kind of go through a period of, I was the guy and now someone else is the guy, and that's great in that community? Or have you seen people do that well?
Well, I've been in so many communities. I started my work 26 years ago now, back in Southern California. So I was part of that core, back then, before there were accelerators and before there were venture studios, before people talked about angel networks. I mean, this was, so I've seen what that looked like, and I've been part of the growth of that. And you realize the best thing, a great ecosystem is one without a single point of failure or even a few points of failure. You need lots of people, and they just take handoffs. And I think ultimately, when you see it done well, there's a humility to the work, which is that you help catalyze, you help charge up, and then you succeed when you know that you can step away and things keep on going. And by far, the best ecosystems have been those that they take on a life of their own. Like, I was in Silicon Valley for almost a decade, and I'd become part of the life of that place. And you learn it's a very humbling place, because the moment you step out, you don't matter anymore. Like, the system just goes on, and it takes on a life of its own. The organizations that you're a part of, they don't remember you in 3 months. Like, it's that, things just move on. And I think that's a sign of why Silicon Valley works. It's a sign of great ecosystems where any individual can go away and it keeps on going. I would say, I think the individuals that tend to be really good at leading are those that don't just build programs or build initiatives or change policies directly. They actually shape the air itself. They change the way that people think. They change the way that people do things. I mean, you look at the role of Steve Jobs in Silicon Valley. It wasn't just the products he developed. He shaped the very air that people breathe. Like, they think differently because of him, right? He even said, think different. Like, and he's not the only one. There are so many that had that kind of catalytic effect, where they actually, they left ripple effects because of the way they shaped the very fabric of a place. And that is far more important long-term than any particular one program that someone can build.
Shape the air is such a great phrase. So Hollie, Taylor, Rae'Mah, all in different ways, you all could push on the idea of, is it different when the population size is different? I mean, we've actually, in the past episode, Rae'Mah, Victor, and I did a piece on how it can sometimes look different at different population sizes, just literally factually fewer people. Hollie, Taylor, Rae'Mah, give us a perspective from your own experience. When have you seen someone do a good job stepping away and giving space? When was it hard? What were the difficulties? I mean, Hollie, have you seen that in your different contexts over the years?
Yeah, I think, I've never been to Silicon Valley. Actually, I drove through Palo Alto once, but and I pulled up like a home app just to see like how much houses cost, and realized I never could be there because cost of living. But it goes to why I think it can be different when you have fewer people and fewer resources. It's just going to follow my interest. And people coming.
Hollie, I think you're breaking up a bunch. Is that me? Hollie, sorry, I'm not getting the sentences. Sorry. Maybe even try going off video. Let me loop back to you. Because I want to hear that, Hollie. So maybe go off video and see if we can get you to come back on that. Taylor, Rae'Mah, push on me about, does this look different? When have you seen it happen well, where someone steps away, or what are the difficulties? How do they look?
Yeah, I think, and I know you mentioned smaller ecosystems. I actually wanted to touch back on something Taylor said earlier when she was like, when you're being tapped, you're like, you up next. I'm like, who? Me? I'm feeling like Prince Charles on that episode of The Crown. Like, can't be me. I don't know if this is the kingdom I want, and don't laugh at me, Chris. I think
I'm such a Rae'Mah fan. I could just,
it is the energy.
I could laugh. Rae'Mah's got like a stand-up bit that I would just sign up for this. Sorry, go ahead, Rae'Mah.
I'm gonna sign
Very dorky Netflix stand-up special that I would be all in on for.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna let you know when it comes out. But it's for real though, because I think ultimately, especially as a young professional who is out here trying to set up events, I don't know if we're always doing it with the intention of being the heir to the throne. Because you're like, let me do really, really well. And then maybe I build up myself to go to the next ecosystem. So then it becomes like what Hollie was saying earlier, like, am I doing this for ego? Am I doing this because I've built a lot of relationships here? Does it make sense for me to exist and to continue to grow, maybe grow a family here as I step into that level or phase of my life? But it's interesting. I've seen it done well, but I don't know that everybody's always thinking about the succession plan. Like Hollie said, I think it is a lot about ego. And so I'm at this current place. I even did a panel out of town way back, and I'm like, supposed to be on a young professionals panel. I'm like, all these people's over 40. What young professionals panel is this? But people aren't ready to leave those roles.
Taylor, let me actually approach it in a different. Or
Go
go ahead. Because I have a different angle on, but go ahead if you have something on that.
Yeah. So I would say, I have the privilege of having seen this done really well. And I mean, Chris, Victor, you know this about me. I'm a Kansas fan through and through. I'm the most Kansas thing you're ever going to see. But the Kansas Leadership Center, KLC, they have a phenomenal framework. If you're familiar with it, it's called When Everyone Leads. And it was funny. I was talking to Brian recently, and he said, what's the first thing that everyone says to you when you go into like a new ecosystem? It's like, well, my ecosystem's different. No, it's not. It's very similar to a lot of other ecosystems, actually. And so when everyone leads, it really frames the leadership. It frames all of this as it's not a position. It's not a title. It's not any of these things, right? It's not even a person. It's the activity that anyone can exercise. It's a conscious choice. There are challenges. There are all of these things around us that we're facing, and we can collectively address those challenges. We can collectively approach those things as leaders together, or through that scarcity lens, the scarcity mindset. I prefer the abundance mindset. And so I think Kansas Leadership Center, they really hit it on the head, and not just for entrepreneurial ecosystems, for food scarcity, for workforce challenge, whatever it is, like that lens of leadership and anyone being able to lead, regardless of who's got next, regardless of which kingdom we're standing in. It's really a mentality. It's an energy that you bring to the space. And I agree with what everyone has said. It's the removal of that single point of failure. We have a lot of that throughout the Midwest, and we're going to face a lot of those challenges when we haven't decided who has next. We've really monetized entrepreneurial ecosystems almost into its own industry. We're getting those grants. We're doing this thing. But what does that look like for the entrepreneurs that are the ones we set out to serve? Is that still our main focus, or is it a business case? And so really just positioning everyone as leaders, it really gets us away from that single point of failure.
I think that is this theme on single point of failure. I'm going to come back to Hollie in a second and see if we have her back, but let me reframe it, because you hit on something important, Taylor. Some conversation around succession planning would be familiar to anyone in any industry ever. GE and the soup kitchen both have challenges around succession. They look different for different reasons, but that's just a thing that is hard because we want to build systems and process. But actually, we're people, so we like to work with people. So it is normal for you to say, oh, the enterprise sales guy I liked, or the community member, or the cashier at Target. Those are all people you like within a system. And so I think the most challenging part, the specific lens around entrepreneurial ecosystem that I think we're trying to get at is we're describing a system that does not have one single leader. That is in some sense the point. It's the definition. It's the strength, as Victor also alluded to. There is no one person who decides who the person is. It's a shared reality. And that is its strength. No one person is descending. You cannot stop someone from coming into a given ecosystem. That's good, which means there's a high bit of noise and really great signal can come out of it. But that means if one person is really good at it for a long time, the orbit starts kind of going around that person. And I think this is the theme I think we're getting at. It's very nice to have that orbit, I'm sure. And so then it can be very hard to want to leave that orbit, understandably. But it weakens the system overall. So I feel like there's this tension that every entrepreneurial ecosystem leader has, where I have to get good enough. I do need people to want to give me the call, but I need to know when to leave. And Hollie, right now I can't see you. I wonder if you want to jump in now. Are you there? I can't hear her, so I'm going to go with technical difficulty. Can someone else pick up on that thread there?
I would love to. And I would actually like to circle back to something Rae'Mah said. when you talk about, where you are in your ecosystem, people going to you, being the person, oh my gosh, if I had $1 for every young professionals thing I get invited to, wow, we would be moving ecosystems at that point. But I think that it's really like Del Gine said something to me the other day, and Chris, I think I shared it with you. You don't have to be 100% correct. You just have to be directionally consistent. And that had so much power for me because I've tried a lot of things in ecosystems. I've failed at business. And I thought I wasn't supposed to fail because like, this is what I do. I teach others how to start businesses. So it was humiliating. And so I think the reality that comes with that and the identification of those barriers. But Rae'Mah, to your point, if you were to ever leave your ecosystem, that is a big challenge of ecosystems, is addressing loss, identifying gaps as they have been created, and then how do we proactively fill those gaps? I love when I get calls from the Bay Area. It makes me feel important. I'm never going back. I learned a ton in Silicon Valley, but there will be times where you're tapped and say, hey, what was that thing you told me 4 years ago? I'll send you the document. We can circle back to it. You're never truly gone from those ecosystems. And I think that that's what we miss is like, there is the air that you created or you provided to those rooms that will still exist long after you leave the room. Just as the way the people I fangirl over, the air of their existence is always going to exist in these entrepreneurial ecosystems, whether positive or negative. And so I think really addressing, like, what are those tough things to address? How do we close gaps as there are value clashes? How do we identify, hey, this quick fix didn't quite work, but that's okay because we're all entrepreneurs in this work. I think that those are sort of the tough questions that need to be filled into this as we're, collectively moving it forward, just directionally consistent.
That idea of you have to be able to address loss, super powerful. I can remember when it stopped. We had technically in Philly and Baltimore in the early days did this editorial series called Exit Interview. When someone, usually an entrepreneur, but sometimes they were like an organizer, was leaving that place, we would interview about why. And we would get so much shit for doing this series that it felt like overly negative. But we thought it was just like we were just trying to find signal and like why people were leaving. I can remember when the pain faded, when those stories punched less hard. And I now look at what a sign of success that was. Like I stopped, it didn't, like in the Philadelphia case, it was working. The population was growing overall and the ecosystem was thriving. And so it didn't really matter when someone left. To Victor's earlier point, it was sad. Oh, a friend is going to be fine. And that I now look at like what 2 chapters looked like when it felt like no one can leave the ship or the ship will go under, to, we're a city. People are going to come and go. Like that's very normal. That's a thing that happens. And if anything is a sign of strength, that's a marker. And you do have to get there. And there's tension about giving enough space. And there can be disagreements about, the leader has to keep hanging on. I'm going to close this out here in a sec, but I wonder if we can do like a last kind of like roundup here. I want to write a piece informed by this that'll go to thousands of ecosystem builders around the country. So what is that like bit of message you want to make sure we're thinking about for either that young organizer who's just starting their career and seeing some old heads and wondering how they get their seat, someone who's mid-career and still has something to give but has to create some space, and someone who's maybe like done it for a while and has to understand how do they give space without like shit talking the people behind them. What's the advice that we want to give to people in any of those positions? And Victor, maybe throw to you.
I think the advice is it's not just about startups and not just about entrepreneurs per se. And this goes to this kind of full circle. It kind of ties into the South by Southwest event a few years ago and IEDC and Taylor joining this call. It's about changing the way that our communities think about prosperity. And once you get into that, when you start to think of it through that reframe, you start to realize, okay, like giving people opportunity to create and build of all kinds, that's how communities prosper. That's how economies prosper. That's how a state or city like thrives. Then you realize there's so many ways to do that. And there's so many inputs into that it's not just like a small class of people. It's not just the people that run the accelerators or the programs. It's the people in the community that they work on the school board. They can play a role in doing this. The people that are in policy making, the people that are in capital, the people that are service providers, they all tie into it, and they all have something to contribute. And I think that realization that it's a 360-degree problem, that everybody can contribute to entrepreneurship ecosystems in their own way, really opens it up phenomenally so. And that's why it's so important that the very nature of economic development is changing, because it really is this wrapper that allows everybody to participate, which goes into a quick little plug around Right to Start and America the Entrepreneurial, which is anyone can participate. Like, you are all part of this idea of the entrepreneurial spirit of our communities and our society. And so right now, Right to Start and America the Entrepreneurial, we've got this call out for governors to participate. But what's cool about it is everyone can tell their governor, this is a democracy. You can tell your governor and send a letter to your governor and say, hey, join this, be part of this thing. And that's what's great about this work. And I think moving it away from, hey, it's just, 1 or 2 or 5 people that make all the difference, to actually everybody can participate and can play a role, is where we need to go. And that's the power of this work, and that's the power of where it's going.
Beautiful. Rae'Mah, Taylor, and I'm going to help close out Hollie, hoping she's back audio-wise. Give me a parting piece of advice. Rae'Mah. You're muted, Rae'Mah.
Dang. I think since I'm, I guess the young buck on the show, I'll just speak to maybe some of the young professionals that are watching. Like, community is everything. I think most of us feel very understaffed. I'm like, dang, I need a personal assistant just for like my intrusive thoughts. But just plan the thing. Get out there.
Rae'Mah's one-liners. Oh my God.
She clearly has a writing staff. I think we all know there's a writing staff that are setting her up.
I love these guys. By the way, I'm also in love with you, Taylor. That's a side note. But I will just say, for young professionals watching, go plan a thing and make it fun. If you're ecosystem building, I hosted a hot girl walking club, and it was none of but my professional friend group, but just take a walk. We went by the park. It gets to be fun. Make it fun for yourself. Don't drown yourself.
Inspiring. Taylor.
Yeah, I love that. This is such a nice space. I'm going to sit here forever. But I appreciate the compliments, and I echo them all back to you guys. And I think that, like, this is what I mean about like fangirling and ecosystem. There's so much alignment. There's so many people that want to do good. But also, like, leadership is risky. Entrepreneurial ecosystems, it's really risky. And I think the thing that I've sort of framed during this call is authority really isn't enough. Here, the hero isn't enough to close the gaps that we need. And that's going back to Victor's point. The thing that I love about America the Entrepreneurial, it tells everyone how you can be involved. It's showing all of us how we can, from any seat, lead and lead America into this next phase of what we're going to be and how we're going to create opportunities for those that want to make jobs, not just take jobs, make jobs, make our ecosystem. And so, it really says a lot about the character of a person. But it is risky. It's not always cute. It's not always polished. Like, I was pampering myself before this call, getting the lighting right and the filters. It's not always cute. It's not always cute at all. And there will be a day that you're not the young buck on the call anymore. And this is the weirdest call I've ever been on, because I'm always the young buck.
Oh, I've been on some weird calls, Taylor. So
that day comes a lot faster. So how much good can you put into a space ahead of those days when you finally get to make your exit? So I think last thing I will say is we need to be entrepreneurs in ecosystems, and start with the exit in mind.
I love it. Hollie Mackey, if I have you, we were doing a kind of parting shot on the advice of of building systems so it's not just one person in an ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been able to hear, even though you guys haven't been able to hear me. So I mean, I would say the same thing, Taylor, right? There's a shared commonality here. And yeah, my parting words would really just be about humility. I think that it's easy to read your own press, and it's easy to, I think, Taylor, when you talk about the lighting, like I actually took a picture of this and sent it to one of my friends, and she's like, "Wow, you look healthy and relaxed. Like, what's going on with you? Like, you never look like that." But we have these moments, and I think it is messy and it is hard, and people don't want you to be successful necessarily, and you have to really have that humility and courage of conviction to know that you're doing it for the right reason. And I think the people who last over time are the ones who can stay centered and stay centered with good mentors and good mentees and a good support network where you can reinforce to one another, right, through the continuum of start to exit, where your purpose is and where you best contribute, and understanding that you don't have to be the face. You can sometimes be supporting cast.
Supporting cast. I think that's super well said. This has been Builders Live, always keeping it cute. If anyone wants you to succeed, it is us. The four of you, thank you so much for joining this month's episode. We'll see you next time, friends.